He never expected a photo to ruin his life, or maybe to rewrite it. The day it all started, the internet decided my son wasn't mine. It began with a simple picture: Leo in his Spider-Man pajamas, grinning with chocolate smeared across his cheeks, standing in the driveway under the Californian sun. I'd posted it on Facebook for my mom, who lived 2 states away. By sunset, it had 1,000 shares. By midnight, it was everywhere. Because apparently, my kid looked exactly like Hunter Cade, America's favorite leading man, the brooding alpha every magazine adored. And by morning, strangers on Twitter were tagging Hunter himself, asking if he had a secret son. I laughed for about 5 minutes. Then Hunter Cade retweeted the photo and wrote 3 words: "We need to talk." By the time I got to work, TMZ was already calling my office. I worked in a small marketing firm in Santa Monica, the kind of place where coffee always smelled like someone forgot to clean the machine. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The receptionist's sweet 20-year-old Kayla looked at me like I'd walked out of a Netflix drama. "Ethan, your kid's famous," she said, grinning nervously. "Like Hollywood famous." I tried to laugh it off. "Yeah, maybe they'll cast him in the next superhero movie." But inside, I was shaking. Because Hunter Cade wasn't just some celebrity. He was the man I'd once known, intimately. 5 years earlier, before Leo was born, I'd worked as a junior assistant on the set of Hunter's breakout film the last summer. We'd had something real, or so I'd thought. Nights sneaking out behind the trailers, quiet talks about dreams, fears, and the exhaustion of pretending. But when the tabloids caught wind of rumors, Hunter had vanished behind his agent's wall, and I'd been let go. Polite way to say erased. I never saw him again. Until now. Until a photo of my son with the same storm gray eyes and half smile brought him back into my world like a ghost refusing to stay buried. 2 days later, a black SUV pulled up in front of my house. I knew that walk the moment he stepped out, confident, careful, like he was balancing fame and vulnerability in each stride. Sunglasses, denim jacket, casual perfection. Hunter Cade in the flesh. My chest tightened so hard I forgot to breathe. "Ethan," he said softly. It wasn't a question. It was memory. "Hunter." My voice cracked. "What the hell are you doing here?" He took off his glasses, and for a split second it was just him, not the movie star, not the scandal. Just the man who once whispered to me in the dark. His eyes darted to the window where Leo's face peeked through the curtain. "Is that him?" he asked. "Yes," I said before I could think better. "That's my son." Something flickered in his eyes: pain, awe, maybe guilt. He took a slow step closer, like approaching a wild animal. "He looks like me." "Congratulations." Half the internet agrees. That night, the paparazzi camped across the street. By morning, tabloids had headlines like "Hunter Cade's Secret Child" and "The Mystery Man Behind the Star." My boss called to suggest I take a few days off for personal matters. Personal matters, right? Like explaining to my 6-year-old why people were hiding in bushes with cameras. Hunter texted me once that day, "We should talk. Face to face." Not like this. I ignored it. I'd built my life from the ashes he left behind: a stable job, a small house, a son who thought I hung the moon. I didn't need Hollywood back in it. But that night, Leo came into my room, holding a magazine he'd found at the store. "Daddy," he said, pointing at Hunter's picture. "Why do people think he's my dad?" My throat closed up. How do you explain to a child that the world can't tell love from scandal? The next morning, Hunter was on my porch again, holding coffee and wearing that expression that used to undo me: part determination, part apology. "I just want to talk," he said. "Please." I almost slammed the door. But Leo's laughter from the living room softened something in me. I sighed and stepped aside. 5 minutes. He nodded, stepping inside like he was walking into a memory. His gaze swept over the family photos: me and Leo at the beach, birthdays, Halloween costumes. His jaw tightened. "He's beautiful," Hunter said. "And happy. Because I keep him away from this?" I snapped, gesturing toward the tabloid chaos outside. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he said. When I saw the picture, I couldn't stop looking. It was like you were looking at a reflection. I cut in. Yeah, that's what everyone's saying. He hesitated. Then quieter. I needed to know if maybe I'd missed something. The words hit harder than they should have. I wanted to yell, to tell him he didn't have the right to miss anything about my life. But before I could, Leo came running in, all bright eyes and messy hair, and stopped dead when he saw Hunter. Hi, Leo said, shy but curious. You're the man from Daddy's movies. Hunter crouched to his level, smiling softly. Yeah, I guess I am. Leo grinned. You look like me. Hunter's eyes glistened. Yeah, kid. I guess I do. That was the first time I saw the cracks in his perfect Hollywood mask. Over the next few weeks, despite everything, Hunter kept showing up, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to play soccer with Leo in the yard. The paparazzi lost interest once they realized there was no scandal, no hidden lover to expose. Just a movie star spending time with a child who laughed too easily and a man who tried too hard not to care. But I did care. God, I cared more than I wanted to. Every time Hunter looked at Leo with that mix of awe and sadness, I saw the man he might have been if fame hadn't swallowed him whole. And every time he looked at me, I felt that old ache return, the one I'd buried under years of anger and quiet survival. One evening, as the sun bled gold over the horizon, Hunter stayed after dinner. Leo was asleep on the couch, his head resting on Hunter's arm. The sight made something inside me twist. Why are you doing this? I whispered. Hunter looked at me, eyes tired. Because I want to remember what real feels like. He told me then about the loneliness, the scripted interviews, the constant pretending. Everyone wants a piece of me, he said. Except you. You were the only one who ever looked at me like I was just Hunter. And you threw that away, I said, sharper than I meant to. I know, he whispered. And I've regretted it every damn day. Outside, the crickets hummed. The world felt small and fragile. Ethan, he said finally, voice trembling. Is he? No, I cut in. He's not your son. The silence that followed was heavier than any truth. But somehow it didn't break us. The silence that followed was heavier than any truth. But somehow it didn't break us. Hunter stood there, the lamplight catching the edge of his jaw. I could see the tremor in his hand, the weight of the answer I'd just given him pressing into the quiet between us. His lips parted, as if to speak, but the words never came. Outside, the street hummed faintly with crickets and the whisper of ocean wind. Inside, Leo stirred in his sleep, his small hand still resting on Hunter's arm. Something about that image, the world's most famous man sitting on my couch, holding my son like something fragile he didn't deserve, felt too human, too raw for the noise that surrounded us. He exhaled slowly. So, he's not mine, he said, voice low, almost reverent. I shook my head. No, but he's everything I have. Hunter nodded, as if that truth was something he could hold. His gaze lingered on Leo again, and there it was, the ache, the quiet longing, not for fame or attention, but for something simpler, something real. He didn't leave that night. We didn't speak much either. He sat on the couch until dawn, his back against the armrest, staring at the faint glow of morning pushing through the blinds. I brewed coffee because it was easier than speaking. Why'd you stay? I finally asked. He rubbed his eyes, a humorless smile tugging at his lips. I didn't want to walk out again. Something in my chest stuttered. It was the kind of line that should have sounded rehearsed, but it wasn't. It was quiet, broken, unpolished. Leo woke up soon after. He blinked sleepily, saw Hunter, and grinned like it was Christmas morning. You're still here, he said. Hunter smiled, softer than I'd ever seen him. Guess I am. Over the next few days, something strange happened. The chaos faded. The photographers stopped coming when there was no scandal to chase. The internet moved on, distracted by another celebrity rumor. And what was left behind was oddly peaceful. Hunter stayed around longer than I expected. He said he wanted to help, but I knew better. It wasn't about help. It was about belonging. He started picking Leo up from kindergarten, claiming it was to keep the press calm. Though Leo's excitement every afternoon told a different story. They'd return home with sticky hands from ice cream, Leo talking so fast Hunter barely kept up. And me? I watched from the window sometimes, trying to understand what this meant for him. For us. It wasn't easy letting him back in. But some days, when Leo would fall asleep on his chest and Hunter would glance at me across the room with that quiet, almost pleading look, felt like the past hadn't disappeared. It had just been waiting for a moment quiet enough to breathe again. One evening, rain rolled through the city, soft and cold. Hunter came by late, drenched but smiling. "Your son wanted to see the storm," he said, shaking water from his hair. Leo ran to the window, pressing his palms to the glass. "Daddy, it's like a movie." I laughed quietly. "Everything's a movie to you too." Hunter joined him by the window, crouching beside him. The lightning flashed, illuminating their faces, two identical smiles in the dark. It hit me then, more deeply than ever, that maybe Leo didn't have Hunter's blood. But he had something else. He had his light. After Leo went to bed, Hunter lingered. He paced the kitchen, running a hand through his hair. "Ethan, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." He hesitated. "Why didn't you tell me?" I froze. "Tell you what?" "That you had a son." I let out a breath, steady but heavy. "Because you didn't ask." His jaw tightened. I didn't know how. The anger that had been buried for years clawed up my throat. "You knew enough to walk away when things got hard. When your agent told you I was a liability, when the rumors started you didn't fight. You disappeared." "I was scared," he said, voice trembling. "I didn't even know who I was back then." "And you think I did?" My voice cracked. "I lost everything that year. My job, my dignity, hell, my sense of self. And you think coming back now makes it better?" He looked down, shoulders shaking. "No, but I hoped maybe it could make it right." The words hung there, fragile as rain. He stayed anyway. Not out of pity, not out of guilt, but out of something quieter. In the days that followed, he became part of our rhythm. Saturday breakfasts, backyard soccer games, quiet evenings where Leo would fall asleep to the sound of Hunter reading stories with a voice softer than anyone would believe from the man on the screen. Sometimes I'd catch him watching Minute with that old fire, but with something gentler, older. Regret, maybe, or hope. "Why do you look at me like that?" I asked once. He smiled faintly. "Because I'm trying to remember what I ruined." Weeks turned into a strange kind of calm. The world outside went on, but inside our little house, life slowed to a heartbeat. One night, I found Hunter on the porch, guitar in hand. He was strumming softly, half lost in the sound. "I didn't know you still played," I said. He looked up, startled but smiling. "I never stopped, just forgot why." He played something wordless then melancholic, hopeful, like a conversation we'd never had. The music drifted through the air, blending with the distant hum of city lights. I sat beside him. We didn't talk. We didn't have to. The silence was no longer heavy. It was healing. A month later, a letter arrived. It was from Hunter's studio. They wanted him back for a sequel, a massive production overseas. 6 months of filming, press tours, red carpets. When he handed me the letter, his fingers trembled slightly. "They want me to leave next week." I nodded slowly. "That's great news." "Yeah," he said, but his voice didn't sound like it. Leo ran in, waving a drawing. "Look, it's us," he said proudly. 3 stick figures under a big yellow sun. Hunter smiled, kneeling down. "That's beautiful, buddy." Leo pointed to the biggest figure. "That's you." Hunter blinked hard, swallowing something heavy. "You made me taller than your dad." Leo giggled. "You're a movie star. Movie stars are tall." Hunter laughed softly, but when he looked at me, the laughter faded. "He's going to miss me." "Then don't make him," I said quietly. He stared at me for a long time. "Ethan, are you asking me to stay?" "I'm not asking anything," I said. "But if you go, go for you. Not because you think you're running from us again." The night before his flight, he came over one last time. The house was quiet, Leo was asleep. He walked through each room like he was memorizing its kitchen light flickering softly, the faint smell of paint in Leo's room, the sound of wind against the curtains. When he stopped by the doorway, I asked, "Do you ever wish things had gone differently?" He took a breath. "Every day. But maybe they had to fall apart before I could see what mattered." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small photo of Leo, laughing in the backyard. "Keep him safe for me." I frowned. "You're the one leaving." He smiled sadly. "That's why I need you to." He left the next morning. The house felt too quiet without his laughter, his music, his steady presence. But life went on: school runs, late nights, the small chaos of raising a child. Still, some nights, when Leo asked to watch one of Hunter's movies, I'd catch my son staring at the screen with a soft smile. "Daddy," he'd whisper. "He talks like you." And I'd just nod. Maybe that's why we liked each other. 6 months later, a package arrived on our doorstep. Inside was a small envelope, a letter written in Hunter's neat, slanted handwriting, and a plane ticket. "Ethan, if you're reading this, it means I finally stopped running. The movie wrapped last week." I thought I'd feel proud, but all I could think about was home. About the sound of Leo laughing in the yard. About you sitting on the porch, pretending you don't care when you really do. There's a premiere in New York next month. I want you both there. Not for the cameras. For me. You once told me I didn't fight for us. Maybe this is me finally trying. Hunter, when I showed the letter to Leo, his eyes widened. "We're going to see him?" I smiled. "Looks like it." He clapped his hands, bouncing with excitement. "Do you think he'll still look like me?" I laughed. "I think he always will." New York in winter felt different, colder, louder, more alive. The night of the premiere, the city glowed with snowlight and flashbulbs. We waited by the side entrance, away from the chaos of the red carpet. When Hunter saw us, his eyes lit up in a way no camera could capture. He knelt, arms open wide. "Hey, buddy." Leo ran into him, giggling. "You came back." Hunter looked at me over Leo's shoulder, his voice trembling. "Told you I would." Later that night, after the lights faded and the crowds disappeared, the three of us walked through Central Park. Snow crunched under our shoes, and the city hummed in the distance. Hunter glanced at me. "You know, I used to think happiness was something you earned, like a role you had to play. And now?" I asked. He smiled softly. "Now I think it's something you choose. Every day. Even when it scares you." Leo slipped his small hand into mine, then into Hunter's, connecting us in one quiet line beneath the snow. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like we were pretending. We weren't fixing the past or rewriting the story. We were simply living it. Snow fell like soft ash across the city that night, quiet, endless, beautiful in its stillness. New York was never silent, yet somehow, as we walked through the park together, the noise faded until all that was left was breath and heartbeat. Hunter walked a few steps ahead, Leo between us, swinging his hands back and forth as though the world existed just for this small game. Every now and then, he'd laugh, the kind of laugh that cracked open the winter air. I watched Hunter from behind, the way the streetlight haloed around his shoulders. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked peace, not performing, not hiding, just being. Maybe that's what love really was: not grand declarations, not chaos, not the rush of what-ifs, but presence. Quiet and steady. The next morning, we met him at his hotel before the final press event. Leo was still half asleep, clutching his stuffed bear, while Hunter packed a suitcase by the window. "You're leaving again," Leo said softly. Hunter paused. "Just for a few days. I've got interviews, meetings, adult things." He crouched, brushing a strand of hair from Leo's forehead. "But I'll be back soon. Promise." Leo looked unconvinced. "You always say that." The truth in that small voice hit Hunter like a stone. He looked up at me, guilt flickering in his eyes. I said nothing. I didn't need to. He exhaled, stood, and walked toward the desk. Then he picked up an envelope and handed it to Leo. "This is for you." Leo opened it carefully. Inside was a key. "It's for the cabin," Hunter said. smiling faintly. The one by the lake I told you about. It's quiet there, no cameras, no noise. Whenever you want to visit, that key will always work. Leo's eyes lit up. Even if you're not there? Especially then, Hunter said. At the press conference later that afternoon, the room was filled with journalists, cameras, the hum of anticipation. The film had already been hailed as a masterpiece. The questions would be endless, invasive, sharp. I didn't plan on staying, but Hunter had asked me to. When the host opened the floor for questions, a reporter in the front row raised her hand. "Hunter," she said, "there's been a lot of speculation online about a child, a boy people think might be yours. Do you want to comment on that today?" The air thickened. 1,000 lenses turned toward him. For a moment, I thought he'd do what he'd always done. Smile, deflect, charm his way out. But he didn't. He took a breath, slow and steady. "That boy," he said, "isn't my son. Not by blood." The room stirred. Murmurs, scribbles of pens. "But," he continued, his voice gaining strength, "he taught me what it means to love something beyond yourself, to show up, to stay." He looked directly at one of the cameras and somehow, I knew he was speaking to me. "Family isn't about secrets or scandals," he said. "It's about choice, about who you become when you stop running." Then he smiled, not the practiced grin of a movie star, but something soft, fragile, real. And in that moment, I realized he wasn't just saving his reputation. He was saving himself. When he stepped off the stage, the first thing he did was find us. Leo ran into his arms, cheering. "You talked about me." Hunter laughed, scooping him up. "I did. Think the world's ready for that?" Leo nodded solemnly. "They better be." Then Hunter looked at me, eyes shimmering with quiet gratitude. "You heard what I said?" "I did." He smiled faintly. "Did I mean it?" "I think," I said. "For once, you didn't have to." The weeks after the premiere blurred into a rhythm: flights, interviews, late-night calls. But through it all, he stayed connected. Some nights, he'd video call just to read Leo a bedtime story. Other times, I'd find small packages on our doorstep. A signed poster, a handwritten note, a book he thought I'd like, and one morning, a letter. "Ethan, the cabin's almost ready. I've been fixing it up. You'd hate the wallpaper, by the way. I keep thinking about that summer on set, when we thought everything would last forever. Maybe it still can, just in a different way. Bring Leo. Stay a while. I think I finally found home." So we went. The cabin sat on the edge of a frozen lake in Vermont, surrounded by whispering pines and the faint smell of wood smoke. The world felt slower there, quieter, honest. Leo ran through the snow the moment we arrived, laughter echoing across the trees. Hunter stood on the porch, watching him, his hands buried in his coat pockets. "I've been waiting for this," he said softly. "For what?" "For it to stop feeling like pretending." I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who had once belonged to the world now belonged to moments like this. The crunch of snow underfoot, the weight of peace in his shoulders, the sound of a child's laughter somewhere between us. "Hunter," I said, "you don't have to fix everything." He turned to me. "Maybe not, but I can start by showing up." That evening, as the fire crackled and Leo fell asleep curled up on the couch, Hunter and I sat by the window, watching the snow drift past. He broke the silence first. "Do you ever wonder what people would think about us?" I smiled faintly. "People will think what they want. They always have." He nodded. "Then maybe we stop giving them the script." Outside, the world was wrapped in white. Inside, everything felt golden. He leaned back, eyes half closed. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "For years, I played roles written by other people. But somehow, this," he gestured around the room, toward Leo, the fire, the quiet. "This feels like the first scene that's mine." The next morning, sunlight spilled across the lake, bright and pure. Leo woke early and dragged us outside to build a snowman. Hunter knelt beside him, helping shape the small round head, laughing every time it toppled over. I stood a few feet away, camera in hand, capturing the moment not for the world, but for us. At one point, Leo looked up and shouted, "Daddy, take a picture of me and Uncle Hunter." Hunter froze for a second at the word uncle, then smiled. "You sure I'm not the snowman?" Leo giggled. "You're too warm to be snow." And maybe he was. That evening, as the sky turned to violet, Hunter pulled out his guitar again. The melody was soft, almost fragile, like the sound of forgiveness. "Remember this?" he asked. "How could I forget?" I said. It was the song he used to play back on set, when everything was new and terrifying and bright. This time, though, the song ended differently. No sorrow, no longing. Just peace. When he looked up, there was no question left between us. We didn't need to rewrite the past. We were already writing something better. Spring came slowly to the lake. Snow melted into streams, the air thick with pine and thawing earth. Hunter stayed longer than he said he would. Maybe because leaving didn't make sense anymore. One morning, Leo came running in, holding a newspaper. "Daddy, Uncle Hunter's in it again." I sighed, taking it. The headline read, "Hunter Cade, the man who walked away from Hollywood." The article wasn't scandal. It was grace. He'd announced his retirement, choosing to focus on real life, the kind that doesn't need cameras. I looked up at him, standing in the doorway with a mug of coffee, smiling quietly. "You really did it," I said. He nodded. "Yeah. Guess I finally learned the difference between being seen and being known." That night, we had dinner by the lake, just the three of us. Leo tried to toast marshmallows and ended up setting one on fire. Hunter laughed so hard he nearly spilled his drink. And in that golden, ridiculous, perfect moment, I realized something simple. We weren't a secret. We were a story, one written in laughter, in small choices, in forgiveness that didn't need to be dramatic to be real. Months later, when Leo turned 7, we threw a small party at the cabin. The sky was clear, the air filled with music. A few neighbors came by, bringing pies and smiles. Hunter hung fairy lights between the trees while Leo chased fireflies. I stood by the porch, watching them, one hand holding a glass of cider, the other resting against my chest to keep my heart steady. He caught my gaze, smiled, and mouthed, "Thank you." For what? I wasn't sure. For letting him in, for forgiving him, or maybe for still being there when the world stopped watching. Whatever it was, I smiled back. Because the truth was, I was grateful too. Later that night, after everyone had gone, we sat by the lake again. The stars reflected on the surface, twin constellations above and below. Hunter broke the silence. "Do you ever think about how it started? Just a picture online." "Yeah," I said. "A mistake that became a miracle." He chuckled softly. "Guess that's life, huh? The best things never look like blessings when they arrive." I looked over at him, at the man who had once been untouchable, and thought about how fragile he'd seemed holding a child that wasn't his, how brave he'd become by staying. "Hunter," I said quietly, "you did good." He smiled, gaze fixed on the horizon. "We did good." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faint laughter of a boy who believed the world was kind. And for once, I did too. Because in a life built on second chances, sometimes the greatest love story isn't about who we lose or even who we find, but who we choose to stay for. And that somehow was enough. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.